Welcome to In These Times, a multi-platform podcast and YouTube broadcasting channel for mental health issues. We want to address mental pain and emotional suffering by bringing you information that can alleviate your distress. And you may make some important mental shifts that bring back your light, your love, your hope. Please use the Contact Us button on our website to let us know your deepest troubles and concerns with your mental health. Help us to help you. At In These Times, we've interviewed Edward Emond, Deputy Director of an eating disorder charity called Beat. He outlined research areas, interventions and support for people suffering from anorexia. In this interview, we look at the psychological roots of anorexia rather than fixing on the physical symptoms. The food obsession of the anorexic sufferer is reinforced when treatments simply target their body and gaining weight. They need space for their feelings and their minds to open up in order to let the food in. So here to help us understand anorexia psychologically is psychotherapist and co-founder of In These Times, Previn Karian. Previn, we've got, it's very sad, this whole question of little girls who look so perfect and they can't settle for just growing up. They want to be thin. And we always think they want to be thin, like their sort of favourite model or someone. And so they just give up eating.
I'm struggling there because there are so many causes, Chrissy, of eating disorders. It's not about necessarily following your favourite model. Eating disorders and its prevalence in young girls is something about their relationship with their parents. Now, I know in the interview that we did, or that you did with Edward Emond from Beat, he said that parents are not the only cause of eating disorders, and he was trying not to blame and shame parents and trying to gain their cooperation in the recovery of the anorexic girl. But the reality is that something clearly has gone not well between the girl and their parents. And when Edward was talking about it, he was talking about physical recovery, helping the physical recovery of the anorexic, and not pushing food down them like a rhinoceros, I believe, being this barging, forceful, you must eat kind of parent, and trying to be a dolphin kind of parent and try and support them in a recovery journey. Now, the problem with anorexics is usually there has been no dolphin. And so what happens next is they act out something else in their bodies. And you're really more talking about control, the need to control something, because they have no control of anything else in their life. That control has been taken away by controlling parents.
So in their minds at somewhere between, say, 14 onwards, they get a feeling, they think, they don't even consciously think there's anything wrong with the parents. They just think, I can control what goes into my mouth and my weight, and that's fine by me.
It's the only place they've got left to control. And that's why they are in that position. So you're quite right. They don't consciously think, yes, I know that food is the only place that I have any control over my life. They find themselves slipping into it. It's almost like walking into a trance state. And in fact, often with our anorexic clients that I've had, they are in a trance state. It's a self-hypnosis of, I can't eat food, I can't touch food. One client saying, if you make me eat, you will kill me. Go on then, stuff me full of food. Now, clearly this is so, and this is somebody who shortly afterwards went into hospital because they were so underweight. Which famously is called body dysmorphia, the inability to see your body other than as fat. Now, or that food will make you fat. Now, clearly what's gone on is some kind of mental shift in perception, some kind of aberration. Something has gone wrong in the self-relationship of the girl and her self-perception of herself. The problem is emotional. The problem is psychological. But what everyone fixates on is the food.
I'm wondering, we'll have a look at the parents in a minute, or the ones you've seen. But so you do get lots of people who grow up with difficult family backgrounds, but it doesn't always turn into something with food or drink. They might get depressed, or they don't achieve very much in terms of education or career. So it seems to me this loathing of self takes different forms.
Absolutely. And as Edward quite rightly said, there are many other triggers of anorexia, but you're coming back to the same issue. There is nothing else to control in the world outside. And there's also nothing to control the sense of emotional chaos, terror, and fear, and self attack. So, anorexic clients are usually self attacking constantly. It is a continuous obsession with food and what they are going to have or not going to have for lunch. How much can they get away with not eating? How can they hide their feeding when they're with friends? It's a number of things that are going on because the dominant emotion, of course, is fear. Now, that sounds like common sense, but it isn't. Okay, they are afraid of food. So clearly the emotion we're dealing with is fear. And the question to then ask is, what is this person afraid of?
Yes, incidentally, you saying that made me think about the interview with Edward, because he said it's a very secretive illness, but you don't always see this huge weight loss. I'm not sure if that's because they wear very bulky clothes or what, but it's something they keep to themselves for quite a long time.
Yeah, and it is a very profound form of self-attack. Now, the difference between anorexia and, say, suicide, where you also attack yourself and you want to end your life, or self-harm, where you are continuously hurting yourself to alleviate pain, the difference with anorexia is it is obsessional in form. It's kind of intrusive thinking all of the time. You can't concentrate on work. You can't concentrate on what you're supposed to be doing because you are constantly thinking about not eating food. And that's the main problem. Superficially, but psychologically, it's obsessional thinking which has a causality to it.
Right. So it's not about looking like your favourite model or someone you see online, nothing like that. Okay.
It can be, but it isn't the general cause.
So I wonder why the figures went up so tremendously. I think, in fact, 50% anorexia went up by during the pandemic and lockdowns.
Yeah, well, if you follow the trajectory of what I'm saying, which is if it is a psychological condition where you are out of control, you can imagine that the pandemic meant that all of us were out of control. We weren't able to control our freedoms, natural freedoms that we took for granted. We were locked down, and the face mask imposition as well. So we became spectacularly out of control. Now, for those people who are already on a knife edge of fragility, they're already starting to become an anorexic type because of what's going on in the family usually. The only place of control became food, and particularly for young girls, the issue was, if I'm not allowed to have the same rights as boys, if I'm not allowed to express my feelings or get angry, if my parents are very controlling and emotionally unavailable, what have I got left? And often anorexia has been described as a protest. And the question is, what are they protesting about? Certainly not Black Lives Matter. Yeah? They're protesting against their parents.
And they must feel very, very lonely in this situation, mustn't they?
Yeah, it is a silent language because so much of it, as you said earlier, is secrecy. So much of it is about hiding. So much of it is about deceiving people and hoping that you can get away with it. Strangely, they're very conscientious. So if you ask them a question, you usually get very truthful, honest responses. They find it actually hard to lie to you directly, but they can do, and they learn ways of not telling the truth or giving you a half-truth without disclosing everything. So it's a terrible world to live in.
So if we could have a look at these parents, I wonder what it is about them that creates this problem in children. Is it because, are they very highly critical? Are their expectations of children so high? What is it that sets this in motion?
Yeah, it's not the case of parents yelling at children about what they should or shouldn't do. It's something else that goes on, and it's twofold. The first thing is that the parents haven't got an emotional connection with the children. They don't have any empathy for the child. They don't have any emotional attunement. They may think they do. They may think they're very lovey-dovey around the children and constantly buying them things. Sorry, none of that is emotional connection. And of course, we've talked about in our parenting interview about the need to understand that emotional literacy or psychological literacy through attachment theory. Now, in anorexia, there is a breakdown, a terrible breakdown of attachment. So it really doesn't matter what you start doing on the surface. Buy them clothes, take them on holidays, buy them a horse, a car, whatever it is you think is going to make them better or feel happy, it won't. What they want is emotional connection and they're not getting it. So that's the first part, that the parents are emotionally unavailable. The second part, as you hinted at, is about perfectionism, high critical standards, and expecting their children to be the same as them or to act out and achieve the things that the parents couldn't do in their lives. And so there's this constant attack on parents that the children are so ungrateful for all of the benefits that they've given these children without realizing, but the children never wanted the benefits. They wanted you. They wanted you as a parent to feel something about them.
Both parents to be available?
Usually both, or one will do, but when both are unavailable, and that's usually because of the parenting structure in anorexia, that both parents are somehow end up in this mesh of being very controlling, of being very critical, of being subtly critical. It's not necessarily yelling at the children, but it's subtle comments, subtle put downs. Oh, you got 2 A's and a B in your grades. Shame about the B, wasn't it? Oh, why did you get a B? And nothing is quite good enough.
Or is it the sort of people who want to show off about their children all the time, so they expect perfection as well?
Yeah, children are trophy ornaments, aren't they? They're the thing you show off to the world and say, my children have done X, Y, and Z. And children pick this up very early, and in some cases, they react back. But it kind of feeds into the gender issue. There's something about girls that are socially gendered to be compliant, to be passive, if I can use the phrase, to put up with crap. And they get it from boys, they get it from schooling, they get it from society, and they get it from their parents.
So it's mostly girls that have it, but there are a small number of boys.
Of course, boys get it as well, and men can get it as well. It isn't gender exclusive, but it is gender prevalent. And it raises a fundamental question about what is it about that cohort, if you like, statistically. What is that telling us about the treatment of girls in society today and the parental treatment of girls in society today?
But the parents, let's just get this straight. I know sometimes you advocate people going out and buying the manuals on psychology and understanding it all and then trying to help their children or whoever it is. But do we not have a picture in our minds of parents who were always quite selfish individuals in the first place, who probably shouldn't have had children?
Yes, I mean, that's a bit of a harsh statement because, you know, we do live in a world of democracy and free choice. And so the choice to be a parent isn't something we can take away from anybody. But parents don't particularly ask the question, are we ready to be parents? Are we psychologically literate to be parents? Are we emotionally mature enough or stable enough in our relationship to be parents? And because they don't ask these questions, you end up in a situation, and particularly in the anorectic situation, where the girl is often a target. Now, it's very complex because actually the flip side of the coin is not just that the parents are very critical, they're very punishing, they're very controlling, and they're high achievers and high performance parents. And that's not about class. It doesn't mean that they have to be highly successful in corporates. You can have working class parents who are very perfectionist and have high expectations of their children. Okay, so it's a parenting issue. It's not a class issue. And what happens with these girls is that they feel a greater need to comply to the parents' wishes because particularly they love their parents and often they love their fathers. If a girl feels too much emotional distance, particularly from a father who ends up being critical of her, she's highly vulnerable and susceptible in a whole number of ways, and one of which can be anorexia.
So this is a very serious illness. I think we'd be quite irresponsible if we didn't say that, because people's whole bodies break down and it can lead to death. So it's not something that you can just ignore, is it?
Yeah, and that's the trouble with the treatments, you see, because it is life-threatening, because it is physically fatal, the electrolytes stop working, which means your heart won't beat anymore. And that's the level that they can get to whilst thinking they're fat. So because of that threat to life, because they're at risk to themselves, there's a huge amount of sky-high anxiety that what would happen if my daughter died? And you can't trust them with food, of course, because they're not going to have it. So all the treatments are literally concentrating on keeping the person alive. But the trouble with that is they want to or need to talk about their minds. They want to talk about their feelings, and they want to talk and tell the true secrets of their life, which might be how horrible mummy and daddy actually are. Perhaps going further, that mummy and daddy are pretty vile, nasty, sarcastic, critical, put down, humiliating, insulting parents.
Well, that's a terrific ask to get any young girl to think that of people that they love.
And there you have it, people that they love. And because they love their parents, they can't even admit it to themselves because there's a huge amount of guilt in doing that. Well, first of all, they can't even say it. They don't have a language to say it because they are not allowed. Now, I do know some eating disorder clinics that understand the issue either of parents, or sometimes it can also be a sexual threat from an uncle or a teacher or some figure of authority that drives the girl into being terrified of their body, actually terrified of looking attractive. And it's another way of trying to keep sexual attention away from them. But it is a space of, it's a question of where can girls have the emotional space to speak their truth emotionally?
People all over the world are watching this, of course, and we'd always be interested to hear from them in these times. But looking at Britain, for instance, I can't imagine the NHS would have the facilities to do much with an anorexic girl unless she got to a really bad stage in weight where they had to get her in to put weight on her.
Yes, but that's all the NHS will do, and a lot of treatments, some quite brutally, by the way, in institutions that I won't mention, but are within the NHS that advocate eat or die treatments, and they try to get parents to force food into the child. So you see, you're back again to the anxiety issue of everyone's terrified that the child is going to die. Now, there are some eating disorder clinics that do have group work and they do have a therapist. And in the secrecy of that space, girls can sometimes start to get to telling what actually is tormenting them. And of course, it'll be different for different girls. But torment is the key word. And that torment has a reason. It's not just there for no reason at all. And the task of therapy is to try and make the anorexic client, feel safe enough emotionally, knowing that the material is confidential, knowing that it is secret, that it won't get out. That's the condition in which sometimes the anorexic will open up. But it's a lengthy process, Chrissy. It's not a 1 year or not even a 2-year process. They really need spaces to work out what they're really feeling and admit it to themselves.
So if they had managed to do that in 2 or 3 years, and they were normally putting on weight, eating reasonably normally, well, you'd expect to see that, would you?
So the issue is to try and get my anorexic clients to think about lean body mass, because they develop a different relationship to their body rather than just put on weight and put on weight. So they start thinking nutritionally about their bodies. And that completely takes the pressure of having to perform to a target and helps them to start asking, wouldn't it be a good idea to actually look after my body nutritionally? Wouldn't it be a good idea to get into cooking and cook some healthy food for myself? But what is healthy food? It's not about putting on weight. It's about eating good, healthy food that you enjoy the taste of. And then, of course, they can't because they want to block it. And then we can deal with that obsession and the muddle that goes on. And what happens then, Chris, is very fascinating, because you then discover that the drive in the anorexic's mind is to become invisible, is to become small, it's to become unseen. They don't want to be seen, but actually they're crying for help. So they do want to be seen, but they're terrified of doing that. So they become small and invisible, and they want to disappear but not kill themselves. So it's not suicidal, it's just this torment of being alive without being dead.
So I can see how your eating nutritionally takes some pressure off them, and that's got to be good, because it's probably the first time anybody's talked to them like that. But it doesn't overcome the basic thing you were mentioning, body dysmorphia, how you see yourself in the mirror. How do you get over that?
Yeah, by not talking about it. So if you keep talking about the body, you then reinforce, you will achieve nothing more than reinforcing the same problem in their brain functioning. What I do instead is to talk about their feelings. And that to them is such a shocking revelation. And on the one hand, I find that my clients, although they love it, they quickly discover that they can't talk about their feelings. They don't know what they are, or the feelings, the words swirl around them in some kind of dreamlike, surreal space, and they can't connect. But the exciting thing then is that they understand and start to see, gosh, I do have some feelings, and some pretty damn strong feelings. And then, of course, we unpack it to then uncover, usually, the difficulties between the father or the mother or both.
Is there any value in talking to the parents?
None. If you're anorexic, try to talk to the parents, unless they're massively emotionally literate or psychologically open. The anorexic client has to work out her space and her feelings. And in my clinical work, it doesn't result in some fabulous understanding with the parents. It doesn't end up with this happy situation where all parties understand each other. It ends up in a situation where the anorexic client saves her life.
That's serious.
Exactly that. And they go on, they understand they have a direction, that they matter, and they have a will, and they have feelings that say, hey, I want to go in this direction, actually, and that's what I want to do with my life, actually, and no, I don't want to be in another abusive, controlling relationship, actually, but I might get attracted to that because I grew up with one, and actually, that's not really very good. And actually, I'm doing what I did at home. I'm ignoring the control. I'm ignoring the abuse. I'm ignoring the put downs, the jokey humiliation that I'm supposed to put up with because I'm a girl or I'm a woman. And no, I don't feel okay with this. And that's where I try to get anorexic clients to, is that internal feeling, a reflex reaction against any person that is going to try and control their thoughts or their emotions or their feelings. And that, of course, Chrissy, liberates this desire to be alive. And it's a beautiful thing to watch, because then you see the will coming into play. And it's no longer about food. It becomes about their life direction, their career choices or their job choices. And it's a wonderful thing to see.
Is there a danger another trigger later on could start it all up again?
Unlikely if they've had the depth of therapy and put in the time. And so now we're talking a minimum of 3 years, one-to-one work weekly. It's unlikely, because when you're in one-to-one therapy with that kind of intensity of what are you feeling, what are you truly feeling, what's the causality of you not feeling, and so on, when you've done that for about 3 years, it then becomes very hard to be triggered. What happens instead is you become very alert to the toxic, controlling person or situation, and you're going to exit or you're going to choose something different. So that's more likely than triggers if you've had the good therapy, profound therapy work over time that enabled you to speak the truth about your parents.
So beware, although you're going to have to pay some money, it sounds like, because the NHS, all they're going to do is try and put weight on you. But would you say beware of the fancy clinics who say they can work wonders?
I wouldn't want to trash the fancy clinics. And they may have a space because, a place, because if you've got an anorexic who is in a life-threatening condition, Of course, they need serious clinical intervention, sometimes in hospital, they need food drips and so on. But you see, this is forcing food down you. But I wouldn't say that the fancy clinics are an entire waste of time. But if all they're going to do is put on weight, that's abject failure. That's when you get the relapses. And again, my clients have relapsed 3-4 times from clinics. So they can't resolve the psychological issue of anorexia. It's not about your body or weight gain. It's about your mind and your feelings. And if you can't find a space to get that with anorexia, then you're in a very vulnerable state.
So does it come with, is depression part of the parcel and anxiety, or do people suffer from all those together?
There's an overlap of depression and anxiety. There's an anxiety that is constant, which is about food. And there's a depression that you're exhausted constantly, you can't play with other people, you get tired very quickly, you can't study, you can't work. So you eventually become depressed with that situation and your life. But what they feel the most is neither depression nor anxiety. They don't even feel the fear. It's quite extraordinary. What they feel is obsessional thinking, intrusive thoughts that they can't stop, and they just literally cannot stop it.
Okay, but we must leave it on a hopeful note. So if they can get the right therapeutic treatment where they can start talking about how they feel and about their families and parents and everything, there is hope.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about having to pay for therapy, always please ask therapists if they're willing to do pro bono work, which is mean for the good, and which means for free. Okay, I've had anorexic clients, well, I've had several clients who were in extreme states of distress. And therapy really isn't the kind of profession you go into to make, 9-figure salaries, okay, and have 7-figure bonuses. It's not about millions of pounds. That's not why we become therapists. We are responding to suffering, to human suffering, and that you may be able to find, you should be able to find a therapist who will understand your economic situation and be happy to work with you for free if they feel that they can help you. Okay, that's the key thing. But please do ask. Don't feel trapped that you can't afford therapy. Most therapists will want to respond in a very positive way and react back to the fact that you've reached to them. They will try and do something. And if they can make it work, in some cases, because my clients feel very undignified about getting free work, and I've said to them, well, you can make a donation, even if it's £1 a session. And it's just a way that they feel that they're giving something back. But £1 a session is affordable, okay? So work it out with therapists and ask them. Please do ask them. Don't feel trapped that you don't have the money for therapy. I can't imagine really any therapist, if they've got the ability to work with anorexia, turning you down because you won't pay. That's almost morally obscene, isn't it? So please ask therapists. We're willing to help as a profession and as professionals. We don't do this for money. And if we think we can help and we've got the diary space, we will work for you, understanding that it's a long-term commitment, that you may have to have free sessions for 3 years, and it's okay.
Very hopeful note, that is. Thank you so much, Previn.
You're welcome.
In These Times is entirely based on your participation and your involvement. Please use the Contact Us button on the website to let us know your thoughts. Please also make a donation so we can go on bringing you more broadcasts. Help us to help you.